Family, we are almost there. We are on the eve of the 2024 NFL Draft. We all get to start from zero. Everybody's excited. Everyone has got hopes and dreams.
It's our night. It's our time. Get it for this city. Get it for each other. We got to smell greatness, and we got to finish strong. Who that standing on beat them six?
Today we're going to take a look at some of the more popular quarterbacks in the NFL right now, what's going on with their prices here recently and over the last year, and what could happen in the draft that could create some shifts in those prices. Stick around. What's going on, sports card hobby family? Back again another day. It's another sports card video. You better believe it. I'm excited to make this one. I am so fired up for the NFL draft. My New Orleans Saints are picking at 14. The last time we picked 14th, we actually traded up to get Marcus Davenport, defensive end, who now I think plays for the Vikings, or he's been bouncing around. We could have traded up to get Lamar Jackson, but we didn't do that. So that's a typical New Orleans Saints move. My hopes is that we go for the best offensive lineman that we can get. We really need a tackle. There are a few in that range, I think, that will be there at 14. Before we dive right in, huge shout out to our channel partners, SGC Grading. You might be thinking, I am ready to get some cards graded. Where should I go? Where can I get some great value? SGC at $15 a card for sports cards. No minimum orders, no clubs to join, and also if you have an autographed card that is manufacturer pack pulled, they will grade the auto for no additional charge. SGC always been a great value, quick turnaround times, $15 for sports cards, and it's $9 for TCG if you got some Pokemon or some Magic the Gathering you want to throw into the mix. Also, justcollect.com. Maybe you have a collection to sell and you're not sure who do I reach out to. Leighton Sheldon and the gang at justcollect.com. They've been doing it for decades and have a good reputation buying collections. So check out the justcollect.com website today. Also, huge shout out to Wooten Sports Cards on Whatnot. One of my guys on Whatnot, if you're a Whatnotter, the live streaming app, this guy has always got some really cool inventory. He has a lot of awesome football cards, which I really enjoy. Also, for viewers of this channel that collect football cards, check out Wooten Sports Cards on Whatnot. 11,000 followers, 5-star reviews. Check out Wooten Sports Cards. All right, like we do every year, there's new quarterbacks coming into the draft, and everyone's kind of forgotten about the other guys. You know, it's like, okay, we've got to think about the future here. Everyone's always a bust after a year or two. A good QB has a bad year, and they're a bust. They're out. And so it's an interesting time because we actually have a deep league of good NFL quarterbacks right now. We're probably going to see 5, maybe 6 first-round quarterbacks this year, which is absolutely bonkers when you really consider there's probably not more than 6 teams that could really even use to add a quarterback to their roster. They've got a guy in place that is a starter, with a few obviously that do, but it's just a very interesting time where teams are moving very quickly. A year or two, 1 bad year, 2 bad years, and you are donezo as an NFL quarterback. There's only 32 starting jobs, and teams are not patient with their QBs in the 2020s. So we're going to look at 3 guys that really, if we look at the hobby and hobby dollars being spent, there's 3 guys that really stand out outside of Patrick Mahomes, who's the king of the mountain, and for good reason, obviously. He's absolutely incredible. For me, I'm taking the stance of anybody but the Chiefs this year. I want to see anybody win except for the Chiefs. I'm not interested in the three-peat. I don't care about it. I'm ready to see somebody else win. So we've got Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and Dustin Herbert is who we're going to be looking at today. We're going to look at Prism Silver Rookie Cards PSA 10. And so let's start with Joe Burrow. All right, for Joe Burrow, the last 90 days for his Silver Prism Rookie Card 2020 PSA 10, it's down 3.8% approximately. It sits at about $1,900, maybe $2,000 for that card in a 10. If we look at the last 365 days, really Burrow's card hasn't moved down a whole lot considering he was injured for most of last year, down 13.8%. I speculate that has to do with people kind of buying it at a higher price and not necessarily looking to just dump off and maybe lose a couple hundred, a few hundred, $500 on a card like this. They would much rather just kind of sit on it, wait for him to come back, hopefully rebound, because Burrow has proven himself. He's been to a Super Bowl early in his career. It's just all been about health. If you knew the guy was going to stay healthy for the next 10 years, then you would probably have no issues buying into some of this stuff. But the fact is 2 out of his 3 years, he's been hurt. And the 1 year that he wasn't, he did great things. And so for Burrow, we just have to see some sustained excellence. The guy can play. It's just a matter of him being able to stay on the field. So I guess first question for people watching, is this a buy? Is Burrow a buy? Because as we kind of get closer to the season, and again, post-draft, there's going to be some excitement again. It's always the best time to sell football cards leading up to the season. It's July and August are really kind of the hot times. The National is always, over the last 3-4 years since I've been going there, the hot QBs are always the big talk. Of course, you got a ton of vintage stuff that moves at the National, but when we're talking about modern cards, a lot of it revolves around exciting QBs. And Joe Burrow, I think, is going to be one of those guys, especially if the Bengals pick up a weapon on offense. I think he could be one of those guys in the conversation again there at the National. Now, the Bengals pick 18 in this draft tomorrow night. And one thing I also want to add to this conversation, speaking of adding a weapon, is we have a very deep, not just QB draft, but a very deep wide receiver draft coming up. And you've got Malik Nabers out of LSU. Of course, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., the standout from Ohio State. His dad was an absolute monster with Peyton Manning and the Colts, everybody knows. Rome Odunze from Washington, Brian Thomas also from LSU, and there's a longer list of guys. And you know what'll happen too. There will be guys that are picked in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round receivers that'll end up being great players in the NFL. Receivers are sometimes tough to gauge, in the draft process. You've always got kind of a few that are at the very top of the list, but then there's guys that just sneak through. It might be a 5th round pick that turned out to be great NFL starters. So it's a very deep wide receiver class. And so it'll be interesting to see. With Burrow and the Bengals, of course, Jamar Chase, it looks to be like that's going to be a duo that works together. I think that Burrow's going to want Chase and Chase wants to be there. I think that that's going to be a tandem that the Bengals are prioritizing to keep together. But T. Higgins is that guy that might be the one on the way out. And that's always part of the issue with salary cap is you can pay Jamar Chase, but can you also pay T. Higgins huge money? And what does that mean for the rest of your team? It probably means you can't. They're just going to have to move off of Higgins at some point. And so it probably makes sense, if possible, there at 18 to get another weapon in there. Because again, you're starting fresh with a new rookie contract. And, hopefully that person can fill in as Higgins moves on from the Bengals, because I think that that's just a matter of time. If Burrow gets another weapon there, what does that do for his card prices, at least in the short run? Over the long run, we're not really talking about long-term pricing. That's going to have to do with legacy, career, over a long, sustained period of time. I'm really talking about more short-term over the next 3, 4, 6 months. All right, let's move to another guy who lost a receiver, Calvin Ridley. 2021 Trevor Lawrence Prism Silver in a PSA 10. The last 90 days, this card, it's at $1,200 roughly right now. That's up 14% over the last 90 days, which is interesting. There's been a little bit of love for Trevor Lawrence here over the last little bit. But over the last 365 days, this card is down 54%. It's down quite a bit. It's bounced back here over the last 90 days, but it is still down, if we're looking back from a year ago, 54%. The Jags pick 17, and again, the obvious kind of move here, I think. And again, you can make the case for a lineman or a defensive end. So I'm not saying there's not other positions here, but what causes excitement for cards is if a quarterback is given a weapon, and the Jags are in need. They are desperately in need. They're not going to be high enough unless they trade up to get a Marvin Harrison or a Malik Nabers or even Odunze from Washington. Brian Thomas could be one of these guys sitting there at 17, possibly. And again, there's a longer list of receivers that could also, I wouldn't be surprised, don't be surprised to see a team pick a receiver and you're kind of scratching your head like, I don't really understand it. But there is receiver needy teams and there is very good receivers in this draft. So at 17, do the Jags add somebody to help replace Calvin Ridley? Trevor Lawrence needs some weapons there in Jacksonville. All right, next up. Justin Herbert, another guy that lost weapons. Keenan Allen is gone. I think they lost a couple of guys there. The Chargers really had to cut bait on some players because of salary cap considerations. But the Chargers sitting at 5 So the Chargers are in prime spot to get either, I think it boils down to Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. I think they would be absolutely ecstatic to get Marvin Harrison Jr. at 5. A lot of people think the Cardinals are going to take him at 4 if 1, 2, 3 goes to quarterbacks. Could it be 1, 2, 3, 4 go to quarterbacks? Could there be a trade down scenario? That's what makes this draft so wild is with all these QBs and teams that are kind of in the teens that might want to move up. The Raiders are kind of an interesting team there. There very well could be draft day trades, but I've also heard that teams at the top, they're asking for a boatload. They're asking for a king's ransom to come in and move up to 3. Like the Patriots have been speculated on. Oh, the Patriots might move back a little bit. You got some good QB prospects. Do you really need to pick one at 3? But they're asking for a ton. I wonder if that shifts as we get either into today or tomorrow, draft days / draft night. If maybe they move off of some of the ask there, or teams just say, you know what, screw it. We're going to pay the ransom. We're going to pay the king's ransom to move up and get it. So it's going to be very interesting. But the Chargers there sitting at 5. Dustin Herbert desperately needs to add a big-time weapon there. His 2020 Prism Silver and a PSA 10, the last 90 days sitting at $1,150. So very similar to Trevor Lawrence's price. That's down 25.8%. over the last 90 days. And again, if you look over the last 365 days for Herbert, minus 42.5%. There is not a belief that this guy can win games, kind of get over the hump. He plays in a tough division. But also I think something that will be interesting, maybe an X factor, is Harbaugh is now the Chargers coach. And Harbaugh is a very, very good coach. And he was a successful coach in the NFL with the 49ers. He was in a Super Bowl with the 49ers. That is going to be very interesting. Harbaugh, no-nonsense guy, but he has had success coaching both, obviously in college, just coming off of a national championship with Michigan, and now back in the NFL. That really could be an equalizer. That could be the thing that really gets Herbert over the hump. And so this is a very interesting player for me. If I'm looking at kind of short term, but also potentially some of the long term, if Herbert prices really continue to go down, if leading up, people are just like, they're throwing him away, and prices continue to move down on some of this stuff, I feel like Herbert could actually be an opportunity because he has a head coach. He is not on a bad team, but they do need a little kind of a rebuild, a little bit of a revamp there. But I like Herbert as a player, and from a talent standpoint, he's there. It's just a matter of, can they put it all together there in Los Angeles? I keep wanting to say the San Diego Chargers, but the Los Angeles Chargers. But they've got pick 5. They've got some interesting decisions to make on draft day. But again, we've got a deep quarterback class, but we've got a very deep wide receiver class, and we already have established players like the 3 that I just named off that could use some added weapons. What is going to happen? What do you guys think? Are you excited? In the comments below, who is your team and who do you want them to take in tomorrow night's draft? It's exciting times, my friends. The NFL, again, it's draft week, so we get a little piece of the pie before, again, we kind of go into the 2-month break before we get into training camp and all the goodness. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.